and welcome. I'm Cheyenne with L'Amour de Paris Photography. Together with my husband Doug, we have been photographing weddings for over 20 years in the US and abroad, which is why we're currently focused on bringing more elopements into our Paris business. We realize that a successful wedding starts with an experienced team of people that are not only experts of their craft, but they are passionate about creating a meaningful memory for their clients. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my dear friend Laura with the Paris Officiant. She is certainly an expert and is truly passionate in creating a special memory for her clients that choose to wed in Paris. Shall we get started, Laura?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
We're glad you're here. So tell us, to start, a little bit about yourself and your business here in Paris.
So I'm a wedding celebrant officiating bespoke ceremonies for my couples, and that means it can be classic wedding ceremonies, meaning with a lot of guests, destination weddings, or like smaller intimate ceremonies like elopements or vow renewal ceremonies. And I'm always trying to do a very personal experience for them, like nothing standard, like really a ceremony that represents the two of them and involves elements that are meaningful for them. It doesn't have to be meaningful for everyone, it should be meaningful for them.
Absolutely. We're always telling our clients there are no real rules other than staying true to themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that's the advantage of an elopement as well. There are no rules, it's your rules, so enjoy it.
Absolutely. So why Paris? What do you think makes Paris so special for an elopement?
I mean, just obviously Paris is the city of love, which everyone knows, and it's true that there is a certain vibe of romance in Paris that is really fitting well to all kinds of romantic events. But other than that, I think Paris is like a great place for especially elopements because there are so many great backdrops, like outdoor locations that we can use free of charge. And you can have a lot of different vibes for your elopement. If you want to have something iconic, well, the Eiffel Tower, obviously. But also there are many elegant, stunning architectural locations like the Louvre or the Petit Palais, like the Golden Gate, Alexander III Bridge. But you can also have a very laid back or like more romantic vibe, or sometimes a bit quirky too, if you want to go to Montmartre or just like special areas in Paris with just street cafes, things like that, or parks and gardens.
I can certainly tell you've been doing this a while because I feel like you just painted the perfect picture of Paris. I could just see pictures of past clients popping up in my head in all these locations. Perfect. I couldn't agree more. So do you find there's a certain type of couple that chooses to elope? Have you noticed any similarities between these couples versus maybe the people planning full weddings, because you do full weddings as well, right?
Yeah.
So anything?
To be honest, not like a huge difference. I think the only thing that sets the couples that are eloping apart is that they really want to have something intimate. And for them, it's more important to have a moment that they can share just the two of them and really focus on each other, other than sharing it with a lot of people. It doesn't mean they don't want to share it with their loved ones, but they're maybe sometimes a bit more shy or like a little more reserved or don't feel like putting their hearts on a plate in front of everyone. So that might be the main difference, but it does not necessarily have to be like that.
Okay. Do any of your couples go back home and have a big shindig after too?
Yes, okay. I think like a huge part of them wants to show the photos and just have a little, I mean, they also have to do the legal ceremony back home before or after. So most of them still have a little celebration with their families or friends back home.
Okay. Well, since you just touched on the legalities, let's actually shift to that part and tell our viewers a bit about what does it take to get married in France? Is it legal? Is it not?
I mean, like a legally binding ceremony is not possible if you're not a French resident. That is the kind of the basic rule. There are these kind of rules. You have to live in Paris, or like not in Paris, in France, 30 or 40 days. I think that's the minimum amount to be considered a resident. And plus the other thing is, if you would be legally getting married in France, you can only do that at your local mairie, like meaning your local city hall. It's also not really worth it, to be honest, to go through all this like hassle to have a legally binding ceremony. So as celebrants, any celebrant or officiant in France can only officiate symbolic ceremonies, but you have many advantages. I mean, first of all, you can choose your spot. You can choose the location where you want to get married. So Eiffel Tower, Louvre, a castle, wherever you want. So you're totally free with that. And you can also create a ceremony that really represents you. It's going to be more personal, more romantic, more meaningful for you.
Super. Excellent. What are the main things that an officiant provides? Are you writing vows for the couples? Do most couples write their own vows with your clients? Tell us a little more about that.
So I think, I mean, what most people also think what an officiant is doing is, of course, writing the ceremony script and officiating the ceremony. That includes for me, like, including their love story, for example, including readings that they like, prayers if they want to. That also includes the heart of every ceremony, meaning the I do's, the question of intent, the wedding vows, and the ring exchange. As for the wedding vows, if they want to include personal vows, I'm not writing them. That's the only part I'm not going to do, because it has to be their own words. It has to be their own feelings that they're expressing to each other. I can certainly give a hand with that, just giving some ideas, some tips how to approach the writing process, or sometimes I'm gonna check for them if the tone is like similar or if the length is similar, if they want me to do that. But other than that, that really has to come from their hearts. But the rest of the ceremony, I'm gonna write it for them, of course. But I'm feeling like being an officiant is not just about writing and performing a ceremony. It's also about, I mean, of course, for elopements, helping with the location, helping with the good timing of the ceremony. But it's also about just creating a space for them, like just creating this moment. Like, I think one of my couples described it really nicely. They said, like, you created a bubble of love for us, which I really loved. And they said it was so crazy because we forgot everything around us during the ceremony. We didn't realize there were people passing. We didn't hear the street noise anymore. Everything was gone, and we were just in this, like, safe in this love bubble. And I think that's, I like the word, first of all, love bubble, yes. That's cute. And I think that's also what I really like and what I feel when officiating, that you really feel like you create this space. You have this moment in time that sets everything else apart, and that helps the couple to actually feel the transition they're going through at this moment.
Absolutely. I have goosebumps with the love bubble. Very cute. Do you find that with your elopements, it's generally just the couple? Are they bringing any guests? Is there a certain number that makes an elopement typical?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's, I mean, the traditional sense, if you can call an elopement traditional, then it means you run away, just the two of us, to secretly get married. It doesn't have to be secret anymore, for sure, but some couples still do that. Running away meaning destination, so here we are in Paris, and just the two of them makes sense, because that's what really sets elopements apart. It's this moment that you share, just the two of you, and where you can focus on each other. So this is certainly the most typical elopement, and also the one that works the best, because, I mean, it's also possible to bring just a handful of people, like your parents, for example, or just your best friends. This is still working very well, but an elopement means we're going to do it at an outdoor public location, and that comes with certain challenges, which are, for example, crowds, but more importantly, the weather, which can in Paris be very tricky, hard to predict, and just change any minute. And that can mean, for example, we have to quickly switch ceremony location if it's starting to rain or things like that. And this is going to be very hard to manage when you have a bigger crowd, when you have many people that are going to join the elopement with you. So I would say, like, I think like 6 people works just fine.
I feel like that's the same number I had in my mind.
Everything, like, also, you know, when you have to change location, you need several rides for a bigger group and all that. There are a few covered locations where we can switch to when it's raining, but they're not like big, you know, and they're still outdoors, and you're still going to share them with other people who are probably searching cover from the rain or something like that. So you cannot do it with a crowd of 20 people. It's just not possible, or you're not going to enjoy the experience. That's also
going to become stressful and lose the meaning you were trying to create with a love bubble.
Absolutely. So I would say then it's just an intimate wedding, and you should look for a wedding venue so that you avoid the stress of the weather, of the crowds, of also the sound, like the noise. We're still outdoors. Paris is a busy city, you know, like lots of people are living here, and we have a lot of traffic and all that. So it's also like a problem if you, for example, have 20 guests. They're not going to hear everything very well with the background noise that we're having.
And then the couple could still go off and take pictures at all the pretty places.
Of course.
But keep it contained for their guests to also have the most pleasurable experience as well. So I'm curious, how far in advance should a couple start planning?
I think like 1 year to half year in advance is a good time. You don't need to do that much further in advance, and you can do it a bit more last minute too. But I think, yeah, a few months. You should still plan a few months to, yeah, prepare everything and to plan everything.
Okay. So I'm guessing that aligns with kind of the amount of time when you're usually booked,
Yes.
if that's also when they're planning.
Yes, exactly.
So anywhere from 6 months to a year on average,
Yeah.
and some as short as 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it
By
shorter.
season.
You can do it shorter. You can do it last minute. It's just going to be also for the couple probably not the most
Right.
stress-free experience if you have to do it real quick. But
Right.
yeah,
What's the shortest one you've ever planned?
I think like a week or something in
Okay.
advance, which still works, but we're certainly not going to have the time to be so detailed about the ceremony anymore if we don't have that much time to prepare.
Okay. That makes sense. Would you suggest a particular order in which your clients are booking their vendors? Do you find that they book you first or the photographer first? Where do you feel they usually are starting?
I think like celebrant and photographer are the first ones couples are usually booking, which makes sense because they're kind of the two main providers making the biggest part of the elopement. Meaning, like for the celebrant, it's a ceremony which makes the elopement an elopement. Without a ceremony, it's just a photo shoot or like a wedding photo shoot. So this is an important part of the whole experience, and the photographer as well, because the couples are going to spend most of the time with the photographer, and also the photographers are going to plan the entire itinerary of the elopement. So I think it makes sense to start with one or the other or at the same time.
Right. Makes sense. Do you find most of your clients are also booking flowers too, the bouquet or a car? Do you find any other vendors to be next most popular?
Yeah, I think like the average elopement would be a celebrant, a photographer, flowers, hair and makeup, and probably transportation for the photo shoot to be able to go to different locations. Sometimes they add videography or maybe like a violinist or something for the ceremony. Maybe a vintage car.
Okay.
So yeah.
Again, I feel like just creating a beautiful picture again. The violin, I'm like, oh yeah, beautiful.
It is nice.
Is there any advice for your couples when selecting their vendors? Do you think it's important that the vendors know each other?
I think what is important out of my experience is that they're choosing at least mainly local vendors, because it's still like you need to not only know good locations in Paris, which I think you could still do like with an online research, but you need to know about all the specificities in Paris, which can be tricky, and you can only learn that by experience. Like, for example, there are locations in Paris where it's really not a problem to do a ceremony with a violinist, as we just talked about it. But there are other locations where it doesn't work so well, and that's not written anywhere. You cannot research that. That's something you learn by doing. You learn through experience, you learn through talking to other vendors, and so on. So for me, it really makes a huge difference if people have a team mainly of local vendors. I have worked with destination vendors, and I sometimes realize that it's not going so smoothly simply because they're lacking this local knowledge. That's all. For knowing each other as a team, it's certainly an advantage because you know, however, like the team, the different vendors, they know each other, they know a bit how they're working together, but it is not like 100% necessary because we're all professionals. So we're going to be able to work even with people that we have never worked with before.
Sure. Good points, though. For sure, I can attest to that too. On being on the ground locally, just staying abreast to, is there a marathon this weekend that we're going to need to help the transportation know which way to go? Absolutely. And are there any qualifications that you need to be an officiant?
So, like legally speaking, we don't have like an officiant school or anything like that we need a certificate of. We're all mainly self-taught. So I think what the skills you need to have as an officiant is, first you need to be able to write something. So, or just enjoy also writing process. Well, like the way I'm creating a ceremony is I'm sending questionnaires to my couples to learn more about them. and then being able to translate these answers into a ceremony that is romantic, that is personal, and that just also like involves a bit of Paris, maybe a little French touch. So this, of course, you need to have that part. But you also just need to be able to create a quick connection with people, because it's not like I know my couples like a long time before. We also, most of the time, we just meet the first time on the elopement day. We have been talking before like a lot via email, or sometimes even a little Zoom call or things like that. But still, it's the first time on the elopement day that we meet in person. And I think you just need to have the skill to quickly connect to someone and to make them feel comfortable and to create the love bubble for them.
Yes. I think it takes a special person to create a love bubble, for sure. So I'm wondering, for your couples, is there an average budget that you find they're setting for their overall Paris elopement experience?
I couldn't really say, because I'm often not sure how much they're still paying for other vendors, or also, I mean, if it's part of the wedding budget, like how much they pay for the dress or anything like that. But you can start, I think, with a low budget. I think the simplest, I had couples that only wanted a quick ceremony. Sometimes it's vow renewals, you know, they don't want anything big. They had their wedding already, but they just want to mark like the occasion of their wedding anniversary. And they only had a ceremony, no photographer, no special attire. So here, with a few €100, you can start, you know. But then it's like, I also had elopements or vow renewals that felt more like a wedding, when it involved like a venue, it involved like a very long photo shoot and like so many things, a candlelight dinner. So it felt more like it's going towards a wedding budget,
Right,
more than an elopement budget. So
right.
I think there's always,
Where do you, in your mind, where is that divisive line from elopement budget to wedding budget?
well, I think starting from maybe 10,000 and
Okay.
more.
Okay. I was wondering if our numbers were the same again.
Yeah.
I think we're close.
Yeah.
I think we're close. Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah. I would think 8 to 10,000 is where you kind of cross into the more wedding budget. Yeah. That's a very nice, I keep going back to love bubble now. A nice love bubble to create for them.
Yeah.
Though. Very special for sure. For sure. What are your favorite locations or venues for elopements here in Paris?
So, I mean, of course, the Eiffel Tower is amazing and it's very iconic. But what I love the most are some of the parks and gardens in Paris, simply because you have, I mean, you know, if you're eloping, you think of something very intimate. And I feel in these locations, you have the best possibility to really have this very intimate moment, simply because there are less crowds in parks. You also usually don't have like street noise or things like that in parks. And it just has more this like laid back romantic feeling. Like I really like, for example, Parc de Bagatelle, which is just beautiful because you have like a rose garden and gazebos and an orangerie, like something that almost looks like a castle. So it's also, we're not talking about like plain parks, like just green, you know, a green lawn and a few trees or something. Like the Parisian parks, you always have some architectural element in them, like something where you can create also the ceremony space, which I think is important. I wouldn't just like stand in the middle of a lawn and that's it. You feel like exposed. You want to have this like little secluded love bubble, you know, this location that allows you to do that. And this is really working well in parks. You find like your little corner there, or you're framed by, for example, the Medici fountain. You have this little frame. Or you have the background, you have the gazebo, you have your little love bubble there too. So I really enjoy those locations. So Parc de Bagatelle, Parc Monceau, Luxembourg Gardens, those are really nice. Parc de Butte-Chaumont as well. So yeah.
It sounds like you know all the special nooks and crannies in the city for sure.
A few for sure, yeah.
I remember, I think the first time I went to Parc de Bagatelle was with you, with
yes.
Shared clients. And there was the gazebo. Did
there
they
was.
consider that like the little Chinese garden? Or I forget does that area have a name?
No, I don't think the area has a specific name.
Beautiful.
It was beautiful.
So charming.
Yes.
And I had never seen it before. We were shocked. Like, what? How was this here the whole time?
And this park is so quiet. Like, I think most people don't know it. It's a little hidden. So yeah, it's one of the hidden spots that you shouldn't miss in general, also when you're visiting Paris. And also the special guest in this park, the peacocks.
Yes, I do remember the peacocks. Right. They added a very charming level. They wanted to say I do too.
Yes, they definitely did that several times.
Yeah. So what are the best times of day for an elopement? And are there any times that should be avoided?
Yeah, I think early morning is the best bet that you have for an elopement.
1000% agree.
Yeah, I feel like everything starting from noon is not going to be so agreeable anymore simply because of the crowds. Paris is, I need to repeat that because I know not every city is like Paris, but Paris is very condensed. It's a very busy city. And it's also a very popular city to visit. So crowds are our main problem, I would say. And especially for the ceremony, you don't want to have too many people around that you don't know, that they're holding their phones up and they're filming your ceremony, or sometimes that's even nice in a way, you know? You have some guests that you didn't expect and they're going to be quiet and listening. But some people they just don't care. They're going to keep moving. They're going to have a loud chat in the background or do whatever they do. So we're sharing the space outdoors. So for me, the only way of avoiding that and having this intimate moment is early morning. And then it's depending a bit on the location, for sure. Like the more popular locations, like the Eiffel Tower, I think sunrise is best.
2000% agree.
Yeah. And some more of the intimate ones that I mentioned before, like Parc de Bagatelle, places like that, you can do it a bit like mid-morning, late morning. It's still working fine. But I think at noon we should be done.
Yes. Go off and have a wonderful, intimate lunch somewhere.
Exactly.
All right. So in the US, we're used to big weddings happening on the weekend. But even from our experience, an elopement can pretty much happen any day of the week here in Paris. Is there any day that in your experience you find works better than the others?
So I prefer weekdays for a simple fact because Parisians like to party on the weekends outdoors. And it happened to me often that I had an elopement in the early morning on the weekend and it wasn't cleaned up yet. Or there were still people partying.
Again, this goes back to being local and being able to realize these things, because I agree. Saturday, Sunday morning sessions at Trocadero, I'm always joking we should be put on the payroll for the garbage people because all the photographers are kind of sweeping it all off to the corner.
Yes,
so I hadn't even thought of that myself, but for the elopements, that absolutely makes sense.
Yeah.
Any other reasons for the weekday?
I think that's the main reason. It's a little less crowded during the week, I feel, because on the weekend you not only have tourists visiting, but also the Parisians enjoying their city. But in the early morning, you don't feel the difference so much. It's really more about the remains of the weekend parties that you find on the weekends.
Absolutely. Very good insight. Are there times of the year that are also better than others, or times of the year that maybe it's best to avoid these outdoor, especially the outdoor elopements?
Yeah, well, I would say like 95% of the elopements are outdoor elopements. So the milder season makes sense. I think most of my elopements are sometime between March, April to October, and that makes sense regarding the temperatures. You can do it in winter, but you really need to know that it's going to be colder. Temperatures outdoors are not going to be as agreeable as during the summer months or late spring, early fall.
Right, which is when we would give them advice to plan their wardrobes more accordingly.
Oh, absolutely.
The bride to maybe wear some tights underneath, maybe a pretty fur shawl, things like that to definitely plan and be more comfortable. So
yes,
they're actually remembering their vows.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I can't agree more with that. And that's not just for winter. It's also like in Paris, as we mentioned before, the weather can be very quickly changing. And it happens that in summer we have a period where it's raining a lot and temperatures are dropping. Same as in spring, we have summer temperatures. So in general, just being ready for an outdoor event, which means like being ready for different types of weather. But I think the biggest challenge are like colder temperatures, especially for the bride. So just picking a wedding dress according to the season, that's already a good start. But then also just like bringing some extra layers that you either put under the dress or on top of it, and especially for the ceremony, because that's the moment when you're not going to move. During the photo shoot, you're still going to be moving around and you maybe not feel the cold so much, but during the ceremony, you're going to be standing there for 15 minutes, something like that, and you're not going to be moving. So this is the moment where you easily get cold. So better bring a little something extra, feel comfortable, remember your vows, remember this moment instead of just freezing, for sure.
Absolutely. Do you have any other creative ways or ideas for your couples that are Maybe they're a little more nervous about the weather aspect. Any other thoughts or advice
Yeah.
for them if
Yeah, well, you can certainly book an indoor venue for your ceremony. For example, I really like the Shangri-La because you book pretty much your room. I mean, you have to choose your room accordingly, and you have a terrace, a balcony with an Eiffel Tower view. So in this case, you just have a little backup plan, and you're not going to have to be so stressed about the weather. But there are other venues as well. For example, the Ritz, they have a nice courtyard. They also have like pretty ballrooms and all that to do these types of ceremonies, and other hotels in Paris who either have like rooftops with a view or just really nice indoor spaces which you can use for the ceremony. At least for the ceremony moment, it's maybe good to take the stress off the weather, and that's also probably the moment where you don't want to be holding an umbrella or something like that. Yeah.
But if you have to, we'll make the photos look great. So we pride ourselves in being an all-inclusive, all-welcoming business. Is there anything you'd like to say or touch upon to our same-sex couples that are looking to wed in Paris?
For sure. I mean, I welcome everyone who wants to celebrate their love in Paris with their vow renewal, with their elopement ceremony. For me, it doesn't make any difference. Everyone is welcome to celebrate their love here.
3,000%, 10,000%. Absolutely. We're upping our percentages now. So let's talk about incorporating special ceremonies that help make things more personal. I do know you a bit more personally. We've worked together, we're friends. So I know that you have some special touch points that you like to incorporate for your clients. And sometimes you're learning that based on their wishes, and I'm sure coming up with creative ideas individually as well. What are maybe some of those special ceremonies you do most often, or maybe a more unique one that you've experienced?
Do you mean like with ceremonies, you mean like rituals?
Yes.
Within
Sorry.
the ceremony?
Yes.
No problem. No problem. Yeah. So of course we have some limitations for an elopement ceremony simply because we don't have a private venue, or like we cannot have a lot of material or things like that. But a very nice ritual that I often incorporate into elopement ceremonies is a hand fasting ritual where you're binding the hand. I mean, the expression to tie the knot comes from this ritual. So it's pretty much I'm tying the hands of the couple in a specific way so that by pulling on the loose ends of the cords, they're tying a unity knot. So this is a very nice symbol to just affirm their vows. And I like these types of rituals because, well, we often say actions speak louder than words. So this is a way of symbolizing your promises, that you're also willing to take action in regard of your promises. This is pretty much what it's symbolizing. So that is one that can be easily and very easily included into an elopement ceremony. What we also often do is remember people that have passed away, because that's often something that is important for couples to just take a moment and remember a specific person that was important in their life and that is just not here anymore. And that can also be done, of course, with just a mention, but you can also do that in a symbolic way. For example, one time we were just putting down a rose at the ceremony location, which we also have picked because the bride knew that the person really liked this location in Paris. They had been to Paris before. So we chose the spot accordingly and put down a rose. So this person was symbolically present with us and witnessing the ceremony in this way. You can also include other cultural elements into the ceremony. For example, a breaking the glass ritual, which is usually part of Jewish wedding ceremonies. That is also something that can be easily included and that I have done a few times before. And just recently, that was a really nice idea of one of my couples. It's actually a Japanese ritual. I don't remember the name anymore. But you're pretty much also breaking like not a glass, but like something of porcelain. You're breaking that, and then later on, you're gonna glue it together again with a specific like golden looking glue.
Yes.
So of course they didn't do that during the ceremony. They were just breaking it during the ceremony, and once they were coming back home, they were fixing the porcelain again. And this actually represents that during your life or during a relationship, many things may not go as planned, and sometimes you may hurt each other, but the important thing is that you actually use the pain to create something more beautiful in the end. And I think that's a very nice symbolic.
I'm tearing up over here. I remember just coming across this concept recently too. I think that is amazing, and I didn't think about incorporating it into a ceremony. But when Doug and I do a vow renewal someday, I think we're going to have to add this in there. I love that. I love that. And then they just take their own wedding puzzle, if you will, to put together when they're back home.
Yeah, totally. Oh yeah, another one that I really like. I just wanted to add that because I really like this ritual because it's reaching out into your future. It's a time capsule, and this can be also done in a very simple way for an elopement ceremony. Where you can just put items of your trip to Paris inside, for example, or also like love letters to each other, or a flower of your bouquet, or things like that. And you just, during the ceremony, you put all these items into a little box or an envelope, and you seal it, and you promise to only open it on your first wedding anniversary, or 5th or 10th, whatever you want to aim for. And so you already have something to look forward to on your wedding anniversary when you rediscover all these elements. And that's a ritual that you can personalize very well, like all the items that are important to you, that speak to you, and that are a nice keepsake of your trip.
I love that there's so many different options as well for, again, just making it more unique to the couple. I think you've already touched on a couple I haven't heard of, and we've done weddings for over 20 years. So that's great. That's great. I look forward to hearing more in future years of new ones that have popped up. Maybe one of the most intriguing questions today, or most insightful for you yourself. What is your favorite part of an elopement?
Officiating the ceremony. I mean, it might sound simple, but that's really the moment I enjoy the most, because that's when the connection is happening, and that's when the love bubble is happening. So I do, of course, enjoy writing. I'm coming from writing somehow. That's what I did before. And so I've always enjoyed this process. I also like just a little planning before the ceremony, like when we're picking locations and things like that, the communication leading up to it. But for me, for sure, the absolute favorite moment is the actual moment of the ceremony when everything is happening.
So let's talk about dressing for the occasion. Have you noticed if people go all out still for the elopement? Are there big dresses? Do you find the dresses are smaller? Or do you think it has nothing to do with what type of dress they select, of it being a smaller, intimate?
Not necessarily. I think still probably like 90% of my couples choose the same wedding attire that they probably would wear for a traditional wedding. So meaning like a tux and a bigger wedding gown, or smaller or bigger, but like more like a traditional one. But I do also feel that like a smaller part of the couple take more liberties in choosing their outfits, and maybe go a bit more casual or a bit more edgy for their elopement, which they might have not done for a traditional wedding.
Okay, so how many hours should a couple plan for their elopement, and maybe a little insight into what does a typical elopement timeline look like?
Also, that is very much up to the couple, of course, and all the elements they want to include. But I would say like the average elopement would probably include something like hair and makeup, the ceremony and the photo shoot, which are maybe around 3 hours, I would say. So that would make it a total of hair and makeup, maybe 2 or 3 hours, then the photo shoot, maybe 3 hours. So maybe 6 hours in total. And it also means getting up really early because you need to be ready by sunrise. So like 3 hours before sunrise, you wake up, you have your stylist coming to your hotel, they get you ready, hair, makeup, you get dressed. You go to the first location that you have agreed upon with your photographer or officiant, depending what you're starting with. And then you have your photo shoot and your ceremony. And I think the timeline of this part is depending on the choice of locations, because if you choose to have your ceremony at the Eiffel Tower, then most likely we start with the ceremony and then you move on with a photo shoot to different locations. If we do the ceremony in one of the parks, then you probably start with a photo shoot and finish with a ceremony. So that's just a very rough timeline.
Great, that's perfect. That sounds like a solid day. And then I always think it's nice to go off to lunch after.
Oh yeah. So I was just touching on the part where we as vendors are somehow involved. But then, of course, afterwards, brunch, lunch, depending how early sunrise is, it might be more a brunch or a breakfast. And just enjoying the city or taking a nap, maybe also
I think
too.
The nap in the middle of the day is definitely required. All right. And so finally, if people want to book you for an elopement here in Paris, what's the best way to contact you?
by email, theparisofficiant@gmail.com, or just on my website through the contact form. I'm on Instagram as well, so you can contact me through Instagram, all the social media platforms. So you're going to find me. The Paris Officiant, you're going to find me.
If you found this information useful today, we'd love it. If you like, subscribe down below, and we're definitely going to drop all of Laura's pertinent information and details for you there so you can find her. Well, that was certainly a plethora of amazing, incredible information for those looking to plan an elopement in Paris. I think for those not looking to plan an elopement in Paris, we may have just convinced them.
Yes, come to Paris.
And now that we have all of those amazing questions answered, it'd be nice to get to know you just a little bit. If I can ask you just a few more questions about Laura as a person and
With
not
pleasure.
just the officiant. So how long have you been in business as the Paris Officiant?
It's 8 years now, so my ninth year is starting this year in 2024.
All right. And is it just you, or do you have a team as well?
It's not just me anymore. I have a team of 5 celebrants now, and I really enjoy working with the team because it just brings so much variety into like what we can offer. For example, just the languages we can offer, because I do have a lot of couples that want to have a bilingual ceremony because they come from different backgrounds. This is more maybe for weddings because of the guests, and not all the guests are always able to understand English or French or things like that. So, but that's something that is really great that we can offer with my team. So we can cover English, French, Spanish, Italian, German, and Arabic. So that's
Wow.
quite a lot. But other than that, I also feel being a celebrant is a very personal thing, or like it's all about personality too. And I like to be able to have different personalities for different couples, and they can also choose, of course, the celebrant and just feel like, okay, we clicked with this person the most, or we want someone who has more like a religious background, or we want someone who is more like laid back, or things like that. So it's a great add-on, or just a great variety for the clients to choose.
Sure. What services do you offer, and what are most popular?
So all kinds of ceremonies, pretty much. Wedding ceremonies for big events, bilingual ceremonies, elopement ceremonies, smaller events, vow renewal ceremonies. I also did some baby naming ceremonies, but that's rarer, I would say. So the most required ones are weddings and elopements, for sure.
Lovely. I remember hearing about the baby naming ceremony
Yeah.
and thinking that was also intriguing. And we've actually had quite a few clients come back to us for photography through the years. So maybe, you're going to start seeing
might
more
happen,
baby
yeah.
naming ceremonies in the next several years,
Yeah.
coming back to see you again in Paris. How did you end up in Paris?
It was because of love.
Aw.
So my, at that time, boyfriend, now husband, he lived in Paris. And we were kind of getting sick of our long distance relationship that lasted for 9 years. So at some point, we just felt like, okay, we need to be able to be at the same place. So that's pretty much when I decided to move to Paris. It wasn't a hard decision. I mean, first because of my husband, but also Paris is not the worst city to live in.
What are the most enjoyable or fulfilling parts of your job?
So I think the most enjoyable and fulfilling part is, again, for me, the connection that I can create with people. So just by the in the process preparing the elopement, just to get to know couples from all walks of life, with all different kinds of backgrounds. And it's just really nice to see how people trust you and open up and share their story with me. That's amazing. I'm always stunned, like, wow, they're sharing all that with me. I'm feeling so honored, and then translate that into a celebration that represents them, and the officiating part, of course, to do that on the day, and to really when you think about it, it's pretty crazy because it's not a legal ceremony. So you need to create this moment to make them feel, okay, we're going in there as boyfriend and girlfriend, or girlfriend and girlfriend, boyfriend and boyfriend, and we come out as a married couple. So this transition has to happen, and that's really, for me, that's always like, I'm in awe, like how this is happening and working, like just through this energy we create together.
Goosebumps again. So, you're married then. You just told us that. What was your wedding like?
So pretty much the same thing that my couples are doing. We eloped. We went to Japan and had a very intimate elopement there as well. It was the two of us plus two friends from Korea because not so far away. So it was easy for them to travel to us and to join us there. So this was really nice, and it had all the typical elopement challenges because on our elopement day we had a typhoon, so we could not actually do the ceremony and the photo shoot. So rings a bell.
This is why she understands and gets it all. Personal experience, not just working with your clients.
Exactly. So we had to postpone 2 days, but we could not postpone our traditional Japanese meal anymore that we had booked in a very nice restaurant. So we ended up celebrating our elopement 2 days before it happened, which was also very fun and actually much better than planned because we had 2 days to celebrate, so it couldn't have been better.
There you go. There you go.
Well, I think it's really like how many couples are doing it too, that I'm officiating their wedding when they're in Paris. So yeah.
Right. And I guess for your husband, as beautiful as Paris is, for him, he needed a destination to leave Paris.
I think for both of us, because we're both working in the wedding industry here, so it felt too much like our office.
Right.
So we needed to leave the office to get married somewhere else.
Absolutely. When you're not working, what do you enjoy doing the most?
So, I mean, being in Paris provides you already with a lot of stuff you can do. I really like all things, like all cultural things. So in Paris, you have so many nice museums, exhibitions, concerts, so many cultural events that you can enjoy. Also just enjoying the city, having a nice coffee with friends somewhere or a picnic. But other than that, I also just enjoy reading. I always loved reading and writing. And also just moving, meaning I like doing yoga, I like hiking, trail running. So that's mostly outside of Paris, but there's a lot to do outside of Paris too.
Absolutely. And so what are a couple of your favorite things to do in Paris? Specifically, some secret charms, or maybe it's some of the obvious that you don't feel are overhyped and are totally worth it.
The Orangerie is probably still something that many people are visiting, but I really love it. It's not one of the bigger museums. It's the place where you see Monet's water lilies, which are pretty much paintings that go like in an oval room all around the room. Those are amazing, and I go back there regularly to see them. I do love contemporary art, so I really like the Fondation Louis Vuitton, which is great, as well as the Fondation Cartier. Those are for sure not the ones that are on the first time in Paris bucket list, but those are really great places. Also, architecturally speaking, already by itself, really nice places to visit.
Super. I'm really excited with those recommendations too, because I finally just went to the Orangerie this spring and have not been to the other two. So those just officially went on my list. Well, we again are so happy and thankful that you were here today. And this also gives you a little more insight into who Laura is as a person and not just her business side. Well, again, we're so happy that you had the time to be here today and to give you a chance to get to know Laura and planning with your elopement.
Well, thanks for having me, and I look forward to many more elopements together.
Absolutely. We'll drop all her contact details below. If you found all this information useful today, we'd love it if you like and subscribe, because we'll continue to bring you more wonderful Paris content in the days to come. Thank you for being here. Merci. Au revoir. Bisous.